welcome to Lab Rats. I'm Andy Walker.
I'm Sean Carruthers.
And today on the show, actually, you're drinking a tasty beverage over there, Sean. What is it?
This is Pepsi, Andy.
What percentage is it?
That's 14% carbohydrates. How about you? What are you drinking today?
I'm drinking a tasty can of Nestea Zero.
Yeah, what's the percentage on that?
It's 1% sodium.
Excellent.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. On with the show.
Mm-hmm.
Today on the show, we're going to show you how to add memory to your computer. It may sound like a very fundamental and simple thing to do, but there are a lot of pitfalls when it comes to adding memory, and yet it's one of the most powerful upgrade tools that you can have to turn an old computer into a newish, better, less obsolete computer.
Now, people talk all the time about upgrading their processor, and in a lot of cases you don't need to even think about that. All you have to do to really get a bunch of pep into your system again is add some memory.
You know what? I mean, how many computers have I had over the years? And I've never upgraded the processor. It's frankly a waste of time, and really there's not much point to it. Fundamentally, you're going to have one thing and maybe two things in the life of a computer that you really might want to upgrade that's easy to do, relatively speaking, and that is memory. Because typically what happens is you get a computer that ships with a bunch of slots that are open for memory and maybe one RAM chip that's in there. You know, when you buy a computer, very often they're shipping you the lowest amount of memory that you can buy to make the system affordable. And of course, as the years go by, a gig of RAM goes from being hundreds of dollars down to being 50 or 60 or 70, that sort of thing. So you'll be able to add more affordably.
Right, and at the same time, that 128 megabytes of memory that seemed like so much when you got the system now does almost nothing thanks to the bloat of operating systems and all the requirements of all the software that you've added on since.
Well, 5 years ago, Windows XP came out, and the minimum specs on Windows XP was 64 megs of RAM, which of course was foolish if you ran a system with that. And we found out fundamentally you should be running 128 megabytes at a minimum, and you did some tests, didn't you?
We did. We did, when we were in the Call for Help lab, we did a bunch of tests on the effect of doing a lot of different system upgrades. And we found that memory, adding memory, actually increased system performance.
About 30%, I think it was.
30% in some cases, right?
Well, we went from 128 to 256. We instantly got a 30% increase in performance on boot. And in applications, I think it was sort of a similar type of increase in performance. Now, when you get over, I think fundamentally these days you need 512 megs of RAM to get Windows running, to do all the things you want to do, like photo editing, maybe some basic video editing, things like that, running multiple windows. And then go to 1 gig or 2 gigs if you're serious about doing some heavy-duty photo editing, some heavy-duty video editing, and that sort of thing.
Right.
But let's get into how to add RAM. Sean, let's talk about what we have to do to crack open our system and to add the chips that we need.
Okay, well the first thing you need to do is crack open the case and look through those tangle of wires and cables that you have in there. That can be intimidating in and of itself. What you usually have right next to the processor, we've got that processor here, you've got a series of slots here where the RAM will go into your system. This will typically be populated by 1 or 2 slots in your system. If you haven't gone in there before, you might want to just take a look, see what you do have in there at this point if you do have any free slots. Now, some systems will ship with maybe 2 slots, and both of them are filled with smaller sticks.
I discovered that the other day. I bought a low-end Dell recently, actually about a year ago. It's a 2.8 gigahertz machine. Only has 2 slots.
Right.
And when I cracked open the case to look at how much expansion I had, all the slots were filled.
Right, and this is one thing that you should probably do is check your system specs. It might be looking at the motherboard manufacturer's specs for the motherboard you have, or looking at the manufacturer's site to find out how much RAM you can actually fit into that. Now, there's a ton of different types of RAM out there, and there's faster RAM, there's higher capacity RAM. Not all of it will fit in your system. You'll typically get a list of specifications that say what RAM comes in the system if you're buying one pre-configured from the manufacturer. Plus, you'll also see a thing that says maximum memory. So if you have something that's 256 and your maximum is 256, well, you're out of luck at that point.
You know what? I actually cut through all this nonsense, and I figured out a way to figure this out very, very simply. I go to Crucial.com. It's one of my favorite places to buy RAM. And essentially what you do, actually I have it on my screen here, is especially if you have a name brand computer and you know the make and model, all you got to do is click on a manufacturer. And so let's say I have a Dell machine here, which I do, and I click Go. And we're going to go on down to the Dimension series, which is the machine I have, and I click Go again. It's literally 3 clicks to find out exactly what RAM you need. and I know that I have a 3000 Dimension 3000 series. So let's try that. And bingo! All of a sudden, what you see on this site is on the left-hand side, you'll see that the maximum memory designed for the system. Standard memory installs that Dell provides when you go and buy the machine in the first place. How many slots and or banks are in that machine? And in this particular case, as I said, I have 2 slots, and it shows that there's actually 2 slots, 1 bank of 2.
Right. And
when we talk about banks, some systems require that you install 2 identical types of chips of RAM side by side, and that's called what? Does it have a special name? I don't think it has a special name, does it?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Whatever.
It's
just
just
really matter.
you just have to pair them. Those are really old systems, and some newer systems.
But I think
but not very many these days.
But I think some people, like if they have a system out there that's sort of a 1.5 or 2 gigahertz machine, chances are you might actually be running into this problem particularly. I know my dad, for example, has a machine that's I think it's a 1.8 gigahertz machine, and he has 4 slots, and he has to install identical RAM in slot 1 and 3 and slot 2 and 4.
Oh, that's a different issue altogether. That's actually called dual channel memory. And with that one, you don't necessarily have to with all motherboards. You can actually spread it around. You can put like 512 in one, 256 in another, a gig in another one, and it will all work okay. But for maximum performance, you do want to pair them off. This is actually a bit of a change from the very old systems. You have to pair them off beforehand in very old systems. But that would be like if you had 4 slots, it would be slots 1 and 2. You'd have to pair them off.
This is going back to what the sort of the Pentium 3 days.
Even earlier, even
earlier,
but yeah, you would have to create a circuit, I believe, through the 2 slots and then back out, so it wouldn't work with only 1 in there.
But mostly not so anymore.
No, not so anymore, and in the case of dual channel, you're actually, so check with dual channel, often cases, this motherboard doesn't have it, but often cases, you'll have 1 and 3 slots here are in a different color, so they'll be blue to indicate that they are paired off in that way in a dual channel configuration. Right. So you would put them into 1 and 3 or 2 and 4.
Oh, that's a good little indicator. I didn't realize that was possible.
Yeah. And not all of them are like this. I believe this motherboard is dual channel capable. And it doesn't have
that color markers.
No. Right, and actually the difference that you can get just by changing, so let's just say you had a dual channel board and you had your RAM in slots 1 and 2, you'll get okay performance. Move that 1 slot from 2 to 3 and it'll actually bump up again about 30%. It actually can be very substantial.
So you can use Crucial.com to figure that out. It'll tell you if you need dual channel memory. You can look in your motherboard,
the spec sheet?
The spec sheet, thank you. The manual comes with the motherboard, or it can be downloadable from the maker of your computer, or perhaps if it's an Intel board from Intel.com, places like that. Now, any other issues we should be aware of?
Yes, definitely one issue that you should be aware of. There's a number of different types of memory, and again, the Crucial.com or Kingston.com.
And you're a big fan of Kingston.com,
No,
correct?
I like Kingston, I like Crucial. A lot of memory is very much the same these days. You can get some really cheap memory, and that's one issue. If you have a no-name brand memory manufacturer and you have problems with your system afterwards, maybe the memory.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I like going with brand name with something as important as memory usually. But there's a lot of different types, and both of those sites should tell you whether you need the old style SD-RAM, DDR, DDR2. It'll tell you what speed you need even. Different motherboards will take different speeds. Oops. Right. And I guess we'll be going to Crucial to replace that stick. But you'll see that on the memory that you have typically. This one doesn't say outright, but a lot of times it will say something like PC 3200. Right. So it'll indicate the speed and the type that you should order if you're going to order some more.
Now, one of the things is if you have, let's say, a stick of 3200 and you have another stick that's 2400 perhaps, or 2800, I'm not sure what the number is off the top of my head, but if the number is lower on a second stick, the problem is that the system won't run. If it's capable of running with 3200 speed memory, then it won't run at 3200 because you have mixed speeds in your system.
Right, and because that interacts with the processor, it'll claw the entire speed of your system down if you get RAM that's slower than your processor can handle and your motherboard can handle.
Right. So it's a bit of a sticky procedure. So, I mean, the idea being that, number one, match the speed of your RAM. Number two, buy it from a reputable dealer, such as Crucial.com.